So today I'm going to show you a specific nice feature of the o²S²PARC platform. So we are going to see how to convert your o²S²PARC pipelines into guided applications. So first, a quick introduction about the Spark program for people who are not part of Spark. So Spark program is an NIH-funded program. The acronym stands for Stimulating Peripheral Activity to Relieve Conditions, and the aim is to basically develop therapeutic devices to improve organ function through modulation of the peripheral nerves. So the application are basically relieve conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, or everything that is linked to the autonomous nervous system. Spark is facilitated by the so-called Data and Resource Center. We see it represented here is an infrastructure for sharing data and resources. There are 4 parts in this DRC, and I'm here today representing the part that deals with computation and simulation. I'm from the ITIS Foundation in Switzerland, and we built the o²S²PARC platform. So the o²S²PARC platform is an interactive online platform for computational modeling and data analysis. So it's accessible from your browser. You don't need to install anything, and it enables many things. So you can build modular pipeline, you can share studies, data analysis, execute pipelines, everything from your browser. There are many resources available. These resources, we call them services. We see later a bit how to use them. And there are many resources. So there are generic resources like JupyterLab, there are numerical solver, there are 3D models, there are cardiac models, so something more specific to Spark, but not only. You can access computing power from the cloud. You need to buy your supercomputer or rent your resources on the cloud, for example, Amazon Web Services. You only need to request an account. We'll see at the end of the webinar how you can do that. So what I want to show in this webinar is how to use this App Mode. So what it is, how you can configure it, how it works. So when you share a pipeline with your collaborators, you know what they're gonna see in your pipeline. Also, a nice addition to the App Mode is using the Jupyter notebooks. So if you code in Python, I think you're familiar with JupyterLab and Jupyter notebooks, and now you can turn them in standalone web applications. So your App Mode visualization can be really enhanced with that. So with this, you learn how to turn your pipelines into guided application. And what is really nice about a guided application is that other people who don't know basically anything about your pipeline, your modeling, can enjoy it without having to deal with the code and so on. So what we are gonna cover today is first a quick introduction about o²S²PARC. Maybe not all of you are familiar with the platform, so we'll see a bit the basic concepts so that you can understand and follow this webinar. We see how to create the App Mode view. And we also see it from the point of view of your collaborators, so how they're gonna explore that and use it. We'll see this Jupyter Voilá functionality, which is what allows you to turn your notebook into standalone web applications. And also at the end, we will have times for all your questions and doubts. So first, to see what is this App Mode, let's see it in action. So here we see one of the so-called guided application. So we see here, this is a pipeline with 3 simple steps. You can browse it very easily by going to the next or previous button here using these arrows. You can have interactive steps, you can produce reports and so on. So it really enables many capabilities. So at the end of this webinar, you'll be able to create something like what we just saw. So before going into the details, maybe a few concepts related to o²S²PARC. So when you go to o²S²PARC, to the URL, so if you already have an account, you can log in here. Otherwise, you will see instructions on how to create an account. So you have to go to this web address. When you go here, you end up in the dashboard. So this is how it looks like. You see your studies. So dashboard is your home page. A study is one of these cards here, and this represents a project on the platform. When you open one of these study, you are in the workbench view. In the workbench, you see your study, which is normally made of different blocks. These blocks are services and they are linked. So their input and output are linked and they're represented by arrows. So a service can be a full application, can be a piece of code. And if you already use the platform, you know that we have two main types of services. Some are computational, so they have just some black box code that you can run. So it's an immutable code. Or we have interactive services. So these services basically have a standalone window where you can interact and do multiple things. We see some example in a minute. So what is this app mode? So this is the classical view of a pipeline in o²S²PARC with all the services connected. And this pipeline can grow very complex. This is an actual one that one of our power user built. It's for spinal cord modeling. So when you build it, as I said, can be quite complex. So also it's for spinal cord modeling with the ultimate goal of having a treatment or planning tool for clinicians. So we cannot work with this pipeline, we cannot give this pipeline to a clinician and expect that they can use it. So we need another way of dealing with pipelines. So we developed this app mode. So basically this pipeline can be turned in kind of a slideshow view. So pretty much as you go back and forth with the slides, this is the same experience. So for example, we mentioned some treatment planning application where you would need to use this app mode, or also maybe you want to work with the collaborators, you develop some of the code underlying one of these blocks, but not all the complexity needs to be shown to your collaborator. So you can turn this pipeline in a more simple view. So let's have a look on how to create the app mode view. So let's start from a simple pipeline. It's not one of the big ones we saw before. So let's imagine we have a simple pipeline where we have some input data, we have some code, for example, some optimization code that runs, then we want to inspect the results and then export the results as a final summary of what we found. So let's say we want another collaborator to use this pipeline. So he or she needs to have this input data. So these blocks needs to be shown. Also, we want to have some interactive analysis. So we also want to allow the user to see these blocks. And finally, we want to export them so that they can, for example, download the results. But we don't want to show this computation here. So anyway, these are computational services, so they are black box, they just have code that runs. So we just need to run these two guys. We don't need to display anything. So how are we going to set up the app mode so that just the orange blocks are shown? First, where is the app mode? So this is a typical view of o²S²PARC. You find the app mode in the secondary column here, but you have to remember to click on the workbench, so in the empty space here. Because if you select one of the services by clicking, for example, here, this column changes and you have access to the input and output ports. So in this case, we want to don't select anything. So when you go to the to the app mode and you want to edit, so here it's how you basically create it. You will see this window. This is actually a recent addition to the platform. So now we have a clear explanation now to set up the app mode. So here you can you see that you have three possible ways to set up the app mode. So we want to show some of these nodes. So you can either use these eye icons to say that you want to display some of them, or you can also click on the nodes themselves here in the workbench, or also in this first column here. you can use the arrows to change the sorting of the nodes. By default, they will be sorted according to how you sorted them when you click on them. So I like to show one of the ways you can set up the app mode, which is the easiest and fastest. So basically, is explained here. You can click on the nodes in the workbench. So here I move the window, and I'm going to select one by one the nodes I want to show in my app mode, in the right order as well. But don't worry, if you make a mistake, you can always use these arrows to change the order. So we set up this app mode. Now let's use it. So we have set it up. We just need to use this button here. Again, click on the workbench here in the empty space. You will see this start button. So here it's the same pipeline. I didn't change the study. It's just the app mode view. So very nice. Now we have all our steps here in a linear fashion. So a user that doesn't know anything about our pipeline can use it very easily. You can navigate it by using these arrow buttons here. You can also, there are some also details that you can explore yourself. You can have access to the outputs if you click here. So as usual in o²S²PARC, you have different nodes that have input and output, so you can still access them here. If there's something that goes wrong or you want to see more what's going on in the platform, you can use the logger window here. It is by default hidden. So as I said, the app mode is also meant for people who are not expert about your workflow. So the very nice things of this modality is that you can basically give hints on how the pipeline should be used. So for example, here I'm accessing the first step in the pipeline. This one that requires some input data is a file picker service. For people who are already familiar with the platform, is the service that we use to input data in our pipeline. And if you look at here where you normally have the arrow to continue with the slideshow, actually now you don't have that because there's actually a requirement needs to be met. So here you need to actually input a file. Also, in the app mode, as we saw before, we cannot skip steps. In this case, we are in this step here that, if you remember, add as a dependency computation. So a computational service needs to be run before we can access this interactive service. And here it's a reminder of the pipeline. So we are in this step here, and we see that there's a dependency on this computational service. So we see here the log of this computational service running. So you have to wait for this service to run before continuing. So very nice. Now I want to go back to my pipeline, my normal view. Maybe I want to edit some steps, I want to change something. So here we have a button to stop the app. One thing to notice is, let's say I'm the creator of the pipeline, I share with some of you. You will see the exact same thing I've shown. You can also stop the app. This is something we allow collaborators doing. They can stop and restart the pipeline, the app mode, so that they can see what's going on. But collaborators are not able to edit their pipeline. So when we use this button, stop app mode, we are back to our normal view. You might have noticed that in the previous step, here I'm showing something that is basically a web application, but you might recognize that also it has many features that look like JupyterLab notebooks. So I want to go a bit more in details on how we create this voilá visualization. So first of all, what is this Jupyter voilá and what kind of web application you can develop? Here we have a live example of a Jupyter voilá notebook. where basically people just see markdown text, they can interact with figures, they can do different things. So here we see still some interaction with figures, but they don't see all the complexity of the code. So you can also have other type of widgets. So here you can input some values, you can display some results. This is also interesting, for example, if you in teaching, so if you want to develop some tutorials for classes, for instance. So this is a very nice way of basically showing results in publication as well, or just develop some easy interface for people to explore data without needing to know anything about the code underlying it. So Jupyter Voilá, it's something you can also have installed yourself, but the nice thing of Spark is that it's already all set up for you, so you really need to do basically nothing to have it running. Here I'm showing some services. So here are what you can use. This is what you can use as building blocks of your pipeline. And we have many type of Jupyters. We also had a webinar in the past about all these type of Jupyters. This is the most basic one. So the JupyterLab with all math packages such as NumPy, SciPy, and all of them with this Jupyter have the Voilá capability. So we just need to select one of that. And then to have Voilá, a Voilá notebook in o²S²PARC, it's very easy. It's just 2 steps away from what you've just seen. So the first step you need to do is to have, so this is a JupyterLab interface, maybe you're already familiar with it. You just need to rename your notebook to Voilá in this way. This is really important for our platform to be able to read and render it as you expect. That you develop your notebook. And the nice thing of Voilá is also to take advantage of the nice widgets that have been developed by different open source projects. So here you are in your normal view of the JupyterLab. You can code your widget. For instance, you can use this button, which is very handy, is for having a preview of how it's gonna look in Voilá. So like what we saw a moment ago. And for widgets, there is really lots of things. People got really crazy about developing these nice functionalities. So here are just some suggestions. These are not things that have been developed by us, but it's just open source projects. So for example, there's IPyMPL, which is basically matplotlib. If you use Python, probably you've already used this library, enhanced by all these widgets that can run into JupyterLab notebooks. Another nice thing that I also often use is the IPython widget. So what we saw in the notebook before actually is all based on IPython widgets. So you can, for example, create buttons, interactions, sliders, and really do very, very cool things with your code. So first step, have your notebook with some nice widget, optionally, and call it Voilá. The second thing is slightly a bit more involved, but it's not that difficult. So you need to close your study by using the dashboard button we saw before. Then you need to go to this more option button here in the study card. Here, more options. Then you go to this icon, display button is the boot options. And then you see all the services that you have in your study. And if you have a JupyterLab that has Voilá mode, you just need to change this. And then you can open your study. And it will be, if there's a JupyterLab notebook, it will be booted in Voilá mode. Don't worry, you don't need to remember all those things. These are very well documented in our online documentation. So with this, I think we can conclude this this session. I leave here some useful resources for you. So first, if you don't have an account yet on o²S²PARC, please send us an email to support and please tell us a few words about your project, because the platform was initially developed for Spark, but now it's open to the public, but we just also want to know what you plan to do on that. The documentation, so in o²S²PARC you have close to your user name, you have also a link to the documentation this is the link. You can also access it from here or from the platform. If you are more on the developer side and you're curious about how the platform is built, you can visit us on GitHub. You can also submit bugs. You can contribute to the platform. It's an open access project. And also there are more demos and other webinars about o²S²PARC on the YouTube channels, together with other webinars for all the other DRC resources. And with this, I think we have times for a couple of questions. Any questions? Okay, we have some in the chat. So someone is asking if you can change the email account. Actually not. You would need to create a new one. May I ask, Suranyana, why would you need to change email?
I had used my current postdoctoral, the university address for the Spark project to set up an account, but now I'm changing my university, but it's the same project. And so this email address will no longer be valid. So I was wondering if I could change it to another one, given that it's the same project.
Yeah, actually, I imagine it was some reason like that. Actually, the email doesn't need to be valid. So you can actually continue using your Spark account with your old email. We don't.
Even if it's not valid.
Yes, the only thing is that, for example, if you need to reset your password, then we will need to send you an email.
Mm-hmm.
But as you prefer, I mean, we can very easily create a new one, or you can continue using your old. Everything will still work as it used to work before, even though.
So to create a new one, I need to send an email to support at
Yes,
Spark. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So someone else, Daniel, is asking how we can access the recording. So the recording will be online in a few days, and is normally goes to the sparc.science YouTube channel. I can also maybe send an email in a few days when is online, but everything is recorded and it's going to be online. Any more questions? If not, I really thank you for attending this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.